Hi, I'm Sarah Cowgill, along with Andrew Moran, John Clark, Scott Cosenza, and Graham Noble. And this is the Conservative Five, an online TV production of Liberty Nation News. On today's episode, triumphs and tragedies under Trump, tariffs paying off in trade wars, what are they good for? Recent college grads are finding out that reality does bite and unhireable and unlikable. Geez, Gen Z. The gift that keeps on giving in Hunter Biden, a true chip off the old block. Finally, it's another quick fix to flex the brain and just for fun, Volume 76, and something new is afoot. All this and more in this edition of the Conservative Five.
Didn't deny any of it.
Trade wars. Good God, y'all. What are they good for? Case of the good old USA, it seems to be, well, everything. The United States has been collecting record amounts of revenue from the president's sweeping global tariffs. According to the Treasury Department's July 23rd daily Treasury statement, the U.S. government has garnered $27 billion from customs and certain excise taxes so far this month. Fiscal year to date, which runs from October 1 to September 30, tariff income has reached nearly $150 billion. Who said it couldn't be done? Let's watch this clip.
They're agreeing to open up their countries to trade at zero tariff. So that's a very big factor.
Andrew, what did we just see with Trump and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen? Sorry if I messed that up, Ursula.
Yeah, it's von der Leyen because she's a lion, you know. But anyway, I would say one thing though. The tariff revenue, it's coming from American businesses and consumers, the one who import these goods. It's not that foreign governments are paying these tariffs. It's not as if, China or the European Union are paying these levies. Now, so with this whole US and the EU trade agreement, now, of course, the headline is that, the 15% tariff rate is going to stay on most European goods entering the United States, including automobiles. That's lower than the 30% that Trump had threatened to impose, but is higher than the Liberation Day level of the 10% baseline tariff. Now, I think the big thing coming out of this trade agreement, like a lot of these other trade agreements, Indonesia, the Philippines, is that these countries are investing huge sums of money in the United States. This is on top of the trillions of dollars in private capital investment from likes of, Apple and Nvidia and Google. This deal alone, the bloc's going to invest about $750 billion in energy, $600 billion in investment in the U.S. economy, and hundreds of billions of dollars in military equipment. Now, the European Union pushed back on this, and they said that, well, it's not the governments that are investing directly into this money, it's European companies. Now, there's some pushback wondering, okay, but what if they don't follow through? When Trump is head of the country over the next 3 years and he doesn't see Europe following through on this agreement, then it's most likely that he would just say, okay, fine, so let's go back up to 30% levies. So now moving forward, all eyes are on the China trade agreements. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Trade Representative Jameson Greer, they were recently in Stockholm, and they likely agreed to a 90-day extension of the tariff trade truce. So overall, if the U.S. economy can come out of this trade saga unscathed, meaning no inflation, then I guess you could call this a win for Trumponomics 2.0.
The one thing I disagreed with Andrew about is that he didn't focus on his first point for the entirety of his intro there. And his first point was, said differently, this is an excise tax on the wallets of Americans. That's where this money comes from. It's no great victory for liberty or the American people. It's a yoke around our neck that we have to provide for some political benefit that I don't quite understand. And it would be much better off and pro-American and would make America great again if we kept the people's money in their own pockets.
Can we go back to Graham on rebates?
I don't get that at all. I mean, I don't think it was a good idea when we did it during the pandemic. I don't think it's a good idea now. I don't understand why America has got so many more useful things it could do with the money that it's bringing in, regardless of where that money's coming from. The revenues that it's bringing in, it's got plenty of things that it could do with that, which are constructive for the country and for the future. And so we're now going to send out, I've heard, I think initially $600 checks, and then I think I heard like $2,400 checks for a family or something. And really, I know I want to say most infantile justification for that is, well, because then people go out and spend a bunch of money and that stimulates the economy. But it's kind of really, I mean, I think people will spend more money and stimulate the economy when they see that the country is on the right fiscal track,
Right.
and they have more hope for the future. I don't think you need to put a bunch of extra dollars in people's pockets for kind of like a short-term high. I don't get that myself.
Right.
What I find comical, however, is that you have two things here. One is that tariffs, no matter what you say, no matter whether they're one-time or persistent, tariffs raise prices. That's just the fact of the matter. And now you're going to have rebate checks, which, and the Federal Reserve, credit to the Fed and the economists, they've done research on this, and they show that direct government transfer payments, they are also inflationary, because the government, when people have higher disposable income, they generally they spend more money, and then when they push up, and that pushes up prices. So you have the inflation aspect of tariffs, and then you're gonna have an inevitable inflation aspect from the tax rebates, which, if anybody doesn't know, Senator Josh Hawley, he introduced a bill recently to implement this measure.
All right. Can you just let John Clark speak, please?
Actually, I was going to say
that whole thing. So, what do you got to him?
say exactly what Andrew said. That's exactly what I was going to say.
So, this is not winning. It's not working.
Now, but
you've got a huge deficit and debt.
So I agree with Graham completely on the rebates idea. It's like Bidenomics Redux. It blew up our inflationary cycle then. I think it was the Tax Foundation just recently came out with a report, Andrew may have seen it, showing the impacts of tariffs on food inflation. Not a good thing politically for the president. I totally understand where the libertarian Scott is coming from, but there's a little bit of a different nuance here, though I would just add, not to disagree with you, Scott, not that I wouldn't, but yes, it's coming out of taxpayer money. If it went to paying down the deficit, ultimately, that would be a benefit. We have to pay it down somewhere. We have to either cut benefits, which I'm sure you would agree we should do. But there's another effect that, Andrew could tell me if I'm wrong, but these tariffs cause more competitiveness for U.S. domestic products, and they cause less of a shifting of our trade imbalance. It also, as I think the president emphasized, is going to reduce tariffs on U.S. goods going to Europe. So that is a net benefit to us. But I do believe that overall these tariffs, for instance, the tomato tariff and the beef tariffs, consumers don't want to pay more. As a farmer, I'll say this, consumers don't want to pay more for food, but these policies actually help U.S. farmers who are suffering horribly over time. In 10 years from now, if we don't do something, we're going to find ourselves importing all of our food and at the mercy of foreign producers of everything from antibiotics to microchips to DEF fluid.
Absolutely.
So I do think that there's a balance there where you don't kill the baby and throw it out with the bathwater. So I'm actually relieved it's not worse than it is, if that's a positive. But it is highly complex, as Mr. Moran demonstrated by his cyclone.
Let me just jump out of the gate here.
No, you can't disagree. I didn't disagree with you. You can't disagree with me.
And say it's absolutely bonkers to suggest, as Mr. Clark has just done, that if we don't implement these excise taxes, somehow we won't be able to buy the kind of beef that we want. We have labeling laws. You can't take a side of beef that's full of hormones from China and sell it in an American supermarket and say it's grass-raised, American-made beef. So it's up to the consumer to decide what they want. If the people want junk protein from dodgy
That's what people can afford. That's the problem, Scott. Not everybody has money.
It's what they choose to afford and what they choose to buy with their money. And I agree that they often won't
go as far. If it doesn't go as far, you've got people out here that, families that make maybe $25,000 a year. That is not going to get your fancy ass grass-fed, no hormones, no antibiotics beef. That's not going to cut it.
Well, they're not going to be eating steaks every night for dinner. I agree with you there. But
they can't even make a meat.
Better off without this excise tax in place. That family does better by not having the government meddle in these financial affairs. The people, Graham made a point. He said that there's lots of better uses for this money, no matter where it comes from. And I appreciate that sentiment, and I agree with it. But also, the best spenders of this money are the people who made it in the first place, not government bureaucrats.
I would just add, not to call you bonkers, I wouldn't do that, though. If you think that your beef is safe and labeled when it comes from China, then that's a high trust in our regulatory systems. But what I was hinting at is a longer term prospect. For instance, I remember in the 80s that people said, well, you should buy American, don't buy a Subaru. Well, Subaru's made a good car and they made it cheaper and we lost our auto industry. And, so maybe that's okay, but I'm suggesting it's sort of like a reverse of the tragedy of the commons. If people are going to buy what's cheapest all the time, in the end, that could achieve a calamity. And so I'm just saying that some balance, and when there is an imbalance in the tariffs charged on U.S. goods versus imported goods, which has for years been a drain on our economy, we can only leverage and print money to give people checks. That's why I think we all agree that is bonkers.
People don't
we have
always
a
buy
huge,
the cheapest.
Yeah.
And if you go to a Walmart, you'll see on today's Walmart shelves a lot of organic stuff that never was there a decade ago, because they're willing to spend some amount more money on what they think is a better product. And John Clark, as an attorney, I would hope that you would jump in here on one of the few wins we have culturally and societally, which is, I don't trust the regulators. I trust our civil justice system, and I trust the lawyers that would attack like a pack of dogs some supermarket chain that was found to be mislabeling foreign meat in violation of our laws. So.
Okay, we've gone a little bit off kilter on these guys.
And I don't trust Walmart. So
yeah, it's not. Graham, I'm going to give you the last word. You wrote a great story this week for Liberty Nation News about how the elite media is handling the tariff success. Can you give us just about 20, 30 seconds on maybe a change of heart?
Well, yeah, sure, I can do that, Sarah. I mean, it's basically they're not really having a change of heart, and they're not suddenly all pro-Trump or anything. It's not. This is not.
That's not going to happen.
This is not a "we all lived happily ever after" story. And basically, they're just saying, look, we have to admit we got no choice now. We have to admit that at least so far, Trump's trade wars and his tariffs and all that kind of stuff has not taken a wrecking ball to the economy, which we said it would have done already. And we were wrong. But we still think that's going to happen in the future. And they almost said it as if, some of them almost said it in a way as if they were like rooting for future failure, for future disaster. But for now, they said, yeah, okay, we said he was going to destroy the economy by July, and it hasn't happened. And so, mea culpa.
So now they're just floating that false sense of security. Well, you know what? Americans are mostly for the underdog and optimistic for a better day to dawn. Maybe we are just seeing that. And as a side note, I will gladly sign over my rebate check back into the U.S. coffers. Thanks, panel. Thanks for watching. Recent college graduates are discovering that reality does, in fact, bite. Recent poll by Intelligent found that human resources managers aren't thrilled with the interview process of late. Complaints of entitlement, lack of work ethic, and motivation. Well, add that with expressions of offense when applicants are challenged over their skill set and experience. Well, that's made HR hesitant about bringing Gen Z into the workforce. Is this no big surprise? Oh, Scott Cosenza, as a Gen X, I doubt you took your mom to the first job interview. What's happened?
Well, just what you said right there. Almost 10% of these people are, according to this poll, taking parents to interviews. And I will say this, it's less of an indictment about Gen X than it is about recent college graduates. So I think we should actually focus on that, because it's,
I just called you out for your station in life.
We're not talking about, I think, like, people who are like welders or hairdressers are probably just fine if they're Gen Zers, right? It's the ones whose minds have been rotted. And if you think about how woke the colleges are, it's no surprise. These are participation trophy winners from day one who've, been told that their feelings are what's most important, and that if they feel differently than facts indicate, the feelings should rule. That's sort of where the rot is, right? So my guess would be, I'd like to do commission Andrew for a real economics paper on this. You could tease out, are the recent college graduates from like uh, community colleges and like small state schools less likely to exhibit this behavior? My thought is that they are. Basically, people who are paying for their own way through school, value that degree a little differently for future employment than kind of richer kids from, who've got parents footing their bill. But in any case, they bring their parents. They're not diligent. 33%, I think, said they're not diligent. They have poor hygiene. They're just all in. Not the best group.
Stinkies.
So yeah.
Well, and I guess they're using AI to do first rounds of interviews, like an open cattle call when there's just one person and 1,000 people applying. So they don't like that. They seem to be just offended. I mean, guys, just come on, jump in here, because this is going to be a fun, open discussion.
I don't know if anyone saw it. I did an interview a couple of years ago for Swamponomics TV with a gentleman, Andrew Caprichetz. He's the CEO of Red Balloon. It's a self-described non-woke job board. And he made quite the revelation to me in our interview. And he was telling me they do a thing called the Freedom Economy Index, interview thousands of small businesses. And they found that employers are no longer interested in hiring university or college graduates. What they prefer to do is take young people off the street and just hire them and train them and try to mold them into, the industry, whatever sector that the company belongs to. Because they find that when they've hired college graduates or university graduates, young people, is that they're the troublemakers in the workplace, or they're the ones complaining about having to work long hours. They're the ones who participate in internal gossip. They do all these things that employers don't like. So they veer towards the high school graduates or non-high school graduates. Those are the people they're up for. At the same time, I'm old enough now as a millennial. I was born in 1988, and I'm old enough to remember how everyone complained about millennials. People still do that to this day without realizing that the oldest millennial is in his 40s. But everyone complains, saying, oh, millennials, they bring their parents to job interviews, and they're always on their phones, and they're always late. And I'm just thinking, and then I'm going back in time, and I'm looking at other articles over the years and novels, and people are doing the exact same thing, complaining about the young generation. So perhaps it's part of the human psyche just for the current generation to complain about the next one, and then the next one. Ancient Greek literature, you see the exact same thing of the philosophers complaining about the new generation. So I see on both sides.
Look what happened to them. Okay, maybe the
said.
It's a good criticism to have, Andrew.
Come on, Graham. I know you're biting to say something about this generation.
Well, it's so obvious. We all know the problem here, and it's been said already on this show and everywhere else, is that they've been, they've been wrapped in cotton wool. They've been told they're special. They've been told that they deserve a safe space, and that words of violence, and you can't question people nowadays. You can't questioning their abilities. That's probably racist or something like that. I think part of the problem is also, look, the pandemic. I'm back at the pandemic again, because that did so much damage. And I'm not talking about COVID-19. I'm talking about every other aspect of the response to the COVID-19 pandemic was devastating for our economy, our culture, our way of life, and all this work from home nonsense where everyone was working remotely. People got used to it. People got used to literally not going to work. And now what? You're telling me that I've got to, travel to the office 5 days a week? That's inhuman. How can you ask me to do that? So, and I think that's what it is, because I think a lot of these companies now have gone back to this. We're having people come back into the office and work, and I believe that's how they should do it. People are just not used to that anymore, and they're just not used to being challenged. And I think they need to all learn a hard lesson, and that is, okay, if you can't find a job, good luck to you. And maybe after a few years of that, sitting around the house playing video games but not earning any money, maybe they'll wise up and
go into the military. Get some.
I think the lesson that's going to be learned is out of the colleges, who are going to see reduced enrollments and increased bankruptcies. As
well, that too.
It's I think it's a lagging indicator, these enrollments of the job that they're doing. And it's going to collapse, I think, in my lifetime. Well, assuming I have the actuarial tables are favor me, that they will collapse massively. I think we're going to see, like, if you could short sell colleges and universities right now, I would be a massive short on them for the midterm or long term, because they are just so full of rot. Why would anybody spending their own money looking at the value proposition there? I was looking at
parents do it.
Yeah.
I mean, it used to be prestigious to say, my kid's at Harvard, but now it's like, well,
that's the reason why that there is that economic benefit of, like, saying they have the degree, and also the social thing. Maybe you'll meet the right people and get the right job, but that's less and less. Andrew, you reminded me of the scene in Untouchables.
We need a recruit for extended duty now.
You got all these corrupt cops. They got to go to the academy and get one fresh off the vine, because it's all rotten. So same idea.
All right, John Clark.
Can I just say one thing to Graham?
Hurry up.
Graham, I assure you, I've never been called special in my life, unless it's in a derogatory manner.
Okay.
So, actually tying together everything all of you said, I think we're all in agreement here. I think it has been throughout time that we may have criticized the young who are soft. I think what's changed is there's a larger proportion of them, and I think Scott is dead on with where they're coming from. What I found through my life, and I was raised by a Marine, and I'm a farmer, and my kids are raised to work 365 days a year, often for below minimum wage, no matter what the weather, and even if you're sick and there's no unemployment and there's no disability, and you have to take care of the animals, all right? So I'm a little...
Got to feed the horses.
But when I practiced law, I had people come to me from the local college to work, and I learned this maybe the hard way. If they had a resume and they had not had a job in life, they were already toast. Okay, so what Scott says is true, that if you don't raise your children, each generation wants their children to have it easier than they did. But ultimately, to deprive your children of a work ethic because you want to make it easier for them, you might as well deprive them of a toothbrush because you don't want them to have to go through the arduous task of brushing them. You can replace their teeth more easily than you can replace their slovenly lack of appreciation. And in fact, it's circular, because what we know from psychology is that people take work and being productive as a foundation of everything else in life. And if you just give them a universal income, they're just going to turn into obese, TV watching, screen addicted, anxious people. And that's what we seem to have a generation of. And I have to kind of chime in a little bit in tangent with Graham that DEI and the social justice movement has made the workplace a nightmare for employers. Everybody whines, oh, you're being racist. Oh, I mean, I'm aware of a local hospital right now here in Vermont where they don't have merit pay. You all get the same raise. So guess what? A lot of people call in sick all the time. There's no consequence for that. And you can't criticize anybody. Oh, we have people that have mental illness that are on the ward taking care of patients. Oh, well, we have to coddle them because they're mentally ill and we can't be ableist. We have turned Martin Luther King merit on its head, and now we reward people for anything but. And that's my rant.
I don't know. When I went to college, I left. I did not have an instructor. I had one throw a eraser at me because I was kind of dozing off. But they were
you
not
were a
toddlers. They they said basically, good luck. If you've got your degree, good luck. Go find a job. I mean, we weren't indoctrinated that I noticed.
I think the one other thing to consider here is social media. The way social media has taken the lives, particularly of younger people. You see now, some of these Gen Zers is what they're saying is, you mean I have got to work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday? When am I going to get the time to create my online content and to watch the online content that my friends are creating? When am I going to have the time to do that? I want to be an influencer. I want to be an influencer and get rich. How am I going to do that if I'm working full time?
There's another component of that I find fascinating, which is so much of their lives are in that phone and not out in the world like it was for all of us when we were that age, late teens, early 20s. Maybe they don't need as much. Like, literally, how much does it cost to get a new phone? As long as they can keep affording the latest new phone, if that's where their lives are, maybe that's, that's working for them.
I think that's an insight, Scott. That's also pretty freaking scary.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Studies
Yeah.
show
All
not.
right, guys. I'm sorry, Clar. You get the last word, then we gotta head out.
Well, I just say studies show
It's okay.
Instagram, Twitter, TikTok are causing mental illness in the young, especially, and addiction. So it's not a pretty picture if they live there, because it's making them dysfunctional for society. And they're going to be the ones taking care of us when we're in the geriatric
No, they're
Gen G phase. No.
Yeah, I
They're
already
not
got
gonna
my
take
baby
care of us.
present lined out for that. She's amazing. She gets all of my stuff. Okay, I've got a message for Gen Z. Don't give up. We can't afford to keep you in the basement without an income. So until you land the job, your whole job is to keep looking for a job every day. Thanks to my panel of folks from a certain age. Thanks for tuning in. In a chaotic 3-hour sit down with YouTuber Andrew Callahan, Hunter Biden let loose on everything from drug use to immigration policy, because he's got to be an expert, right?
In which you live in kind of
This guy is a live gift that just keeps on giving. The former first son offered a recipe on making crack cocaine. I will not offer that one up, but he did express very nonchalantly, quote, "You can go to your neighborhood convenience store and just get the ingredients," end quote. Oh, John Clark, Hunter is really promoting his dad these days also. Where would you like to start? How about his stand on immigration?
Well, also pharmacy stocks are up since that interview, I think. And rushing to the store. Yeah, his immigration, he really went on a harangue about immigration and the horrors of what Trump's doing, though Obama and others also deported illegal aliens, and he didn't seem to distinguish between those who are committing crimes here. But I think that what is happening is that it's getting harder for him to find cheap crack because they're deporting all of the fentanyl and crack dealers, and that's why he wants to go liberate El Salvador. But, the whole thing was such an odd sort of apologetic for his dad, attributing Joe Biden's poor debate performance to being on Ambien, dismissing the laptop. I thought that was very interesting. It was as if he could do no wrong. And he did a lot of collateral damage against everybody from Jake Tapper to your buddy James Carville. He hammered him. And oh my gosh, did he have some choice and ripe words for George Clooney, who he says was mad because Biden wouldn't arrest Benjamin Netanyahu when he was in the country. I mean, he was all over the place, but really it was sort of like a post-mortem damage control. And one of the things that I found most striking is that he was just dismissive of the laptop, because the real issue with the laptop isn't even the laptop as itself. It's that government agencies co-opted the truth to help influence an election. You can't say he stole an election, but my gosh, that laptop would have been seismic had it not been stifled. And he just sort of glossed that over. And actually, Variety, in reporting about the piece, called it the so-called laptop scandal. So the whole thing was kind of an opportunistic whitewashing, I thought, and the hypocrisy was pervasive.
I don't think he's the smartest person I've ever known. I just don't. And by the way, the James Carville thing, I have a love-hate relationship with James Carville. And we just don't want to go into that. So
tell us. No, we actually, that should be part of this segment.
I'm not talking about, okay, what in the heck would have happened if all hell rained down and nobody could wake up Joe Biden? Because he's on Ambien.
Take Ambien.
He's out.
Get something in the pharmacy. I think he needs already.
Hunter would, put some stuff together. You run quickly to a Quickie Mart and try to get all these ingredients together.
Exactly.
Lord.
You don't need a Quickie Mart. It's one of those things where if you know the actual answer, it's even preposterous to hear it said that way. You don't need to go to a store. If you have the cocaine, the only other ingredient is baking soda, which I think everybody has in their house. So water and baking soda and cocaine are the 3 ingredients to crack. You don't need a trip to the store.
Well, you just gave the recipe out. Nice. And we avoid corrupting
I'm sure.
anybody who's watching us.
But he also talked about how it was more dangerous to go to the places where he bought his crack cocaine than it was to actually take the crack cocaine, which I thought, that conjured some images of the dark alleyways that he was jaunting around in.
Well, that's a great point, by the way, for drug legalization. It's actually a true thing. It's one of the reasons why the Silk Road was so lauded by many, was it removed that aspect of the drug trade, that interpersonal violence, street corner turf war kind of thing.
Scary stuff.
Yeah. Which is, of course, dropping bodies all over America today. But I don't think with crack anymore. I think it seems to be with the fentanyl or trank or wherever the newest.
Where they lace fentanyl with seems to be killing everyone.
Methamphetamine, too.
Yeah.
And fentanyl is coming out of China. We know that.
In fact, methamphetamine is so cheap, it's cheaper to get it from abroad than make it. We don't have people making it in America anymore because they can import it. That's why we need a tariff on methamphetamine, Scott. I'm just saying.
Once again, why do you want
production home?
Think about the ravages of methamphetamine addiction and what it does to a person, and then you want that person to have to come out of pocket more money to fatten up the government coffers. My God, I'm susceptible, but
away. But
it is one of the more irreversible damages. So we should be thankful that Hunter stuck to other drugs, though he said alcohol was the worst drug by far.
Didn't he have to have all of his teeth replaced? Like he had heavy dental work. A ding dong. It's a ding dong.
Okay, for a start, on the subject of the making excuses for his father's abysmal debate performance was nonsense, because he said, he'd just flown around the world and he'd gone so many miles and then he came back and he was tired. Well, you know what? He came back and he went to Camp David for a few days to prepare for the debate. So he had some time to rest up. So this idea that, he would just they dragged him off of the plane and threw him straight on the debate stage is just,
like his experience is like ours flying coach in a long flight. Like there's a similar, how it is when you get off an international flight in coach for 12 hours, right? Sure.
Oh yeah, it is a bit
same.
He went around the world 3 times, I think he said.
I mean, is this guy going to fade out, or is he just so bizarre that he's like the light and we're moths and we can't wait to hear what he has to say next?
I'm going to say something about Hunter Biden, which some people perhaps will shake their heads at. And it is just my opinion. I'm not a clinical psychologist. However, in a former life, I had to do some training in what is called profiling potentially dangerous individuals. And as part of that, we did a lot of studying of personality disorders. Psychopathy, generally speaking, is what a lot of psychologists would describe it as. And I truly believe that Hunter Biden is a sociopath. I think he suffers from at least one personality disorder, which is narcissistic personality disorder. And one thing about people that suffer from that is for a start, nothing is ever their fault. They'll blame everyone else for everything. They're very good at manipulating people. They are extremely good at telling lies, because lying comes naturally to them. Because they basically believe that they're the center of their own universes, and whatever they or say or do is correct and it's proper, and they enjoyed it anyway. So, anyone who criticizes them anyway is wrong. This is Hunter Biden through and through. I've read so many of his, but through writing about him, doing research for writing about him, I've read so many of his, his texts, his emails, the way he writes, even the way he speaks to people on the phone, the way he interacts with people around him. I mean, he's got all this, he's right there. He's got all the telltale signs. And to me, that interview just showed it so clearly.
Spirals outward.
He paints in his own poop.
I mean, the reason why he was so dismissive of the laptop is exactly why, because in his mind, right and wrong are not really a thing. He defines his own right and wrong. So, the laptop, what does it matter? What does it matter that you saw my laptop or what was on it? I don't care.
I want Graham to profile each of us now. I'm curious now. I want to hear.
I could do it. I could do it.
Andrew. Start with Andrew.
I'm actually pretty good for it. I'm good at it, even if I say so myself.
I'm tall and handsome. That's my profile right there.
How tall are you?
5'10".
You're not tall.
I'll just finish up by saying, Andrew, I appreciate you expressing that in standard measurements rather than the message for our benefit. I do really appreciate that accommodation.
The Canadians. All right. Well, has anybody got anything they want to leave with a zinger, or are we walking out, Andrew? Of course.
Well, I'd say that I'm enjoying actually this whole Hunter Biden thing because he's tearing down the elites. He's complaining about George Clooney, David Axelrod, Pod Save America. Oh, I can't stand those insufferable people. He's complaining about all these different individuals, and it just confirms again how everyone's a phony, everyone is so frail and fake, and everyone's so disingenuous. And Hunter Biden, once again, he put a spotlight on that, and he aired his grievances, and I'll commend him for that.
I'll add one final thing, maybe it's not final, I don't know, but if you think about how the course of history is going to go in 30 years, if Hunter Biden is still alive, the only thing he's going to be able to sell for a significant amount of money is the tell-all. And boy, I hope I'm alive and he is
To read it?
for that to happen. Yeah.
Well, maybe he'll just run for president. Come on, he seems to want to.
I wouldn't entirely count that out personally. I wouldn't entirely count it out.
All right. Well, the Hunter Chronicles are alive and well, as long as someone invites him to an interview or a podcast. So far, he's just done more damage to the big guy in the Democratic Party. Will someone shut him down? We'll let you know when we know. Thanks, panel. Welcome to Just for Fun. We are going to try something different this go around. Those of a certain age remember the Rowan and Martin show Laugh In. Well, they had a segment called The Fickle Finger of Fate. And they just, like the whole show, made fun of people. And we're going to do our best to revisit. Each panelist gets 90 seconds to introduce the wackiest or dumbest thing happening lately in politics. The rest of us have 2 to 3 minutes combined to talk about it. And I was going to go first, but I think I'm going to let Andrew go first.
All right, so you said politics. So I was going to talk about the whole Sydney Sweeney and the American Eagle jeans saga that's unfolding on social media. The left are losing their minds. But because of politics, I'll stick to my original topic. And this is already going down as one of the top 10 moments of 2025. And it's President Donald Trump meeting Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell during the Federal Reserve construction renovation tour. And this moment was hilarious in so many ways. I watched it live unfold and I could not stop laughing. And there was a moment where Chair Jerome Powell, he's sticking out his tongue as he's taking off the hard hat. Trump's just so confidently handing a paper to Jerome Powell, and then Jerome Powell's panicking. He's putting his glasses back on and he's reading it. And then Trump says, the renovation now costs $3.1 billion. And Powell's saying, what? I never heard of that. So he reads it. He says, what are you talking about? That's from a third building that was finished 5 years ago. You can't count that. And then, Trump ignored that and said, well, we're going to look into it. We're going to look into it. So if you put it into context, though, for people who don't follow, the Federal Reserve, the meeting occurred as Trump just has called Jerome Powell every name in the book. He's called him a numbskull, a stupid person, too late Jerome Powell, all these things. So, Powell and Trump, that meeting it just made everything more comical and hilarious. I just had such a great time. I still look back on it with great nostalgia.
They were all dressed up. I thought they were cute in their hard hats. And I didn't tune into that very much, but I'll have to admit it was kind of funny seeing the guy, bust out in some sweat beads.
I thought it was interesting because the media presented it in two diametrically opposed ways. Some said, Trump had disgraced Powell, and some said Powell had handed Trump his derriere on a platter. So I thought it's just an example of how the media spins things. Sorry, Scott, just getting my 2 cents in.
No, don't be. I wanted to ask, sorry to bring something like serious into the equation, but I really do want to ask Andrew. And I kind of know, but also kind of forget. And I think that probably a lot of people watching won't know. Who does Jerome Powell work for?
Well, he's the head of the Federal Reserve System, so he doesn't really work for anybody because, well, he'll. Okay, now you're going to the whole.
I see where Scott's going.
The U.S. Central Bank, they're beholden to Congress, but then the Federal Reserve operates independently, whereby they can make any decision they want without any pushback by taxpayers or Congress. There's actually a lawsuit going on against the Federal Reserve because they have closed door policy meetings. And the people who are filing this lawsuit saying, well, you shouldn't have closed doors meeting because you're a public institution and you shouldn't be deciding things backdoor behind everyone's back, not knowing anything what's going on. So Jerome Powell will say he works for taxpayers in Congress, but it's an independent institution that can wield the power of the printing press and interest rates and anything at once without any congressional oversight whatsoever. Aside from that, the semi-annual monetary policy report.
I was going to go with its member banks, I think, is who I think he works for. But let me ask you this before we get too in the weeds. I don't know. We might want to leave it there. Just from your, you are our our economics man, and I know you pay a great deal of attention to all the data that's coming in constantly, and the policy discussions as well. Do you think that Trump's going to win in terms of getting Powell to lower rates? That's what that's about, right? I mean, it's just about one thing, that if Powell wants rates lowered, he's going to be able to get that done from his position, and Trump's trying to strong arm him to do that, right?
Well, never goes well when people are trying to get rid of the Federal Reserve. It doesn't go well for them.
Well, the consensus is that the Federal Reserve will cut interest rates at the September meeting. And if you look at the summary of economic projections, it's a quarterly survey of Fed policymakers of their expectations. They're penciling 2 rate cuts for the rest of the year. But the whole thing with Trump is that they should be a lot lower now, not quarter point, not half a point, but 3 points lower, because according to him, the economy is doing well, the labor market is doing well, and tariffs are not causing inflation.
All right, Graham, you're up. What is your fickle finger of fate?
Well, I think one of the main political kind of undercurrents swirling in 2025, and it has been swirling all year, and it's going to continue swirling, is Democrats trying to figure out the meaning of life. What their problem is,
42,
why they exist.
42.
Why has God done this to them? All that kind of stuff. That's what they want to know. Their problem is authenticity. It's always been authenticity. You remember the fake accents that Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton used to always put on when they were speaking, because they would be trying to identify with the demographic of the audience. I remember that. You remember that. Pepperidge Farm remembers. And looking at the 2028 hopefuls, they've still got the same problem. And you can't count anyone out right now, okay, when it comes to 2028, who's going to be the top of the ticket for the Democrats. But look at the people they've got. They're all fake. You've got Pete Buttigieg, who is gay, and nobody cares that he's gay, but he posed for that photograph with the fake plastic breasts strapped to his chest.
Oh, yeah.
That was just very silly. But you got him. And then you've got Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, formerly Sandy. She wants to tell everyone that she's a Bronx girl, but she grew up in Yorktown, which is not exactly the Bronx. And she does the little fake accent as well. She sounds very much more Hispanic when she's talking to a Hispanic audience than she normally does. And then there's Jasmine Crockett, who wants everyone to believe she's straight out of Compton, when in fact she's straight out of private school. So there's another one right there. And then, of course, you've got Tim Walz, who pretends to be a man. You've got Gavin Newsom, who pretends to be a governor, and Kamala Harris, who pretends to be competent. So, as you can see, Democrats have got an authenticity problem, as I was saying. They need a real candidate and not a Muppet.
Good luck. Good. Maybe it's going to be David Hogg.
I have to butt in. I'll butt in again and just say, why are we denigrating Muppets? They're a beloved part of Jim Henson's legacy for the world, and let's not, All
right, Scott, you're on a roll. Go ahead. What's your fickle finger of fate?
For the life of me, the Zohan Mamdani, I'm looking down to make sure I get his name right. I have yet ceased to be reeling from the city-owned and operated grocery store suggestion. The idea that there are a sufficient number of Americans, or I don't know, maybe you don't even have to be an American to vote in the New York City mayoral race, a sufficient number of New York City residents, let's just say, to not understand how galactically awful it is. It actually animates my work at libertynation.com, because I think we have so much work to do to inform people about how government really operates, that anybody would trust the government with the means to get them their literal sustenance. That if they didn't do a good job with it, people could have really horrible effects. I mean, the only thing that would maybe be worse if it was government-run pharmacies instead of government-run food, because then you'd be like days away from dying rather than weeks or months away from dying. But without question, I know for sure that they will be a failure 100%. There's no way to make it work, because the only way to make something like that work is to actually have the incentives of the market system. And you take the markets away, it's like the Soviet Union. And for people who don't understand why that won't work, you don't have to be that old to have had a living example of that in the world. A big one, too. I'm sure there's plenty of smaller ones that we can look to now. But the answer is...
Yeah, he's probably still going to be the number one only ticket. And that's just... It's ridiculous.
But that ties into what Graham was saying too about Crockett and AOC. This guy pretends to be poor. He pretends to come from humble means. He's eating rice with his hands. But again, he grew up in a wealthy neighborhood. He grew up in a wealthy apartment. He went to get into some lavish wedding in Uganda that was, had private security around there. So once again, he's just pretending. It's like the Pol Pots and all communist dictators where they pretended to be men of the people when they were just, that such prosperous upbringings.
I'll chime in here. Oh, go ahead. I live in Bernie Sanders land, the multi-millionaire socialist. Okay, yeah, that's the common theme, and Scott's dead on. Scott, the answer is that soft people, going back to our earlier discussion, soft times make soft people. And it's only because of the affluence gained through capitalism and government largesse that so many people are enthralled with the idea of Marxism. As it's a fantasy, it's a cult, it always is. And it always leads to this, Trotskyist divisions that we see and the infighting. But you're absolutely right, it's doomed to fail. And we do have a lot of work to do, and it can be dismaying, because how can people be this ignorant of how things work? And so I do think it's going to crash and burn, and it is a fascinating thing to watch.
Trotskyist divisions, and then starvation. I just had to make that point because we're talking about a food store. Then the next step is we all starve to death because,
well, Mao and Stalin, etc.
Yeah.
And that's
and they tried this government subsidized grocery store thing in, I believe, Kansas City. I was reading about it recently. I think it was Kansas City. They had one, and a local, I think it was a local journalist, went around this store and did a report from inside the store and talked to some of the customers, and the stores, the shelves were literally, all of them were literally 80 to 90% empty, nothing in them. And there was a little cafeteria in the store, and that was closed, and the customers were obviously saying, well, it's always closed. I mean, it's never opened. And there was never, and they were asking some of the customers, and the customers were saying, no, they never have anything in here, just nothing. And they tried so hard to subsidize that store and keep it functional. They just couldn't do it. Just didn't.
John Clark and I were discussing a book written by John Mackey, who's the Whole Foods founder. And he actually talks a lot about how difficult it was for, he's got it held up there.
Oh my God, show and tell.
Yeah. And he talks about how difficult it was to get the grocery portion right. Like before it was dry goods is how it started off. And they had a couple like failures, like the idea that it's easy, like, oh, we know how to keep the right number of strawberries that we don't throw them away to and we have enough to meet demand. That's ridiculous that some mayoral, anyway.
I think you're missing it, Graham. I think in Kansas City, the thing was their sales were so good that their shelves were empty.
Oh yeah. That must have been it.
Yeah, I bet that was.
That must have been
quite the
I didn't even
restaurant.
think
They ran out of food.
Okay, Clark, did you have a fickle finger of fate so we can get off the food stuff?
Well, it did, and I was afraid somebody else was going to steal it. And it's the ongoing drama of the revelations about Russiagate and allegations that Mr. Obama is implicated, and that fascinates me because there seem to be a lot of smoking guns coming to the fore. And most recently, I don't know if it's true because I didn't delve into it, but I saw a headline where President Obama dismissed this as a racist attack. And that's sort of a culmination, it seems to be. Yes, it's all racism. I was young. I was hoping Dave Patterson would be here because he would have more. I don't think any of you have the longer view of Watergate. And I don't think the Republicans swirled around Nixon to applaud his behavior in Watergate. But if, in fact, the revelations about the lies by several government heads of key departments at the instigation of Obama to feed and fuel an attack on Donald Trump are true, then it far dwarfs Watergate. And yet the mainstream media are saying it's a distraction from the Epstein files, which is another big
right
right now. And they're kind of interwoven. It's almost like Epstein is the distraction against Russiagate. And I've written about, and many of you have written about Russiagate for years in the Steele dossier, and the obscenity of that whole affair. And I would love to see justice in that. In fact, I'd drop Epstein just to see the truth come out. Not that we have to either or.
I think it's going to dribble on out. I mean, Gabbard
but the Obama part,
documents little by little.
Russiagate
I think he's panicked.
Yeah.
And by the way, the Republicans did not rally around President Nixon. They convinced him to resign before it got any worse.
That's my recollection.
They told him that they were going to kick his ass out of office if he didn't resign.
Yeah,
that was
it was the Republicans. Democrats
Yeah.
what I thought to do with it.
By the way, the Obama bots are going to. Well, actually, I shouldn't say Obama bots. The Obama insiders, they'll also be on a curve for disclosures when the further away he is the center of the universe of the Democrat Party, and like other power sources get, where you don't have to risk a full shunning to say something negative about him. We're going to see some great books and articles and podcasts come out from people who are going to make some hay with talking about how he was at the center of the universe of that
Jake
Russian.
Tapper. Jake Tapper's already on.
He is not the son.
But
Hey guys, I mean,
I'll just. Oh,
Graham, go ahead.
no, Andrew, you jump in. So what you want to say, Andrew, and then I'll.
Oh, I was going to say, of all this, I think the best thing coming out of this was Tulsi Gabbard and her press conference and how good she looked. That's all I got to say.
She was very straightforward about it. Very.
Yeah.
That's the most serious I've ever seen her.
It's also unprecedented for. Sorry.
You can tell she takes her role seriously because that's the most straight laced I've ever seen her. She was very kind of stern, but I thought she did a great job. But anyway, what I was going to say is that what was interesting, and I too, John, have heard that apparently Barack Obama is now kind of hinting that this is a race thing. He's playing the race card now. But his office did actually issue a statement in response to Trump, because Trump basically said, Obama was the ringleader of it. He was the one that basically told his national security people, go out there, put together an intelligence community assessment that highlights Russian meddling, so that we can basically make it look as though, Trump is basically some kind of like Russian asset. And when Trump made that accusation that Obama was the central guy behind this, the statement that came out of Obama's office did not deny that, didn't actually deny that he did what Trump accused him of doing. It just said, we don't dignify this White House with a response most of the time. But, there's still no getting away from the fact that a bipartisan Senate report said that the Russians had, worked to influence the election, but they hadn't actually managed to, manipulate any of the votes. But that was his statement. He didn't come out and say, no, I did not order this to be done. I did not do that. I did not say that. Didn't deny any of it.
Well, I don't think you can. It's all kind of in reports, etc. And guys, we got to wrap this up. Went a little long, and we'll fine tune it for next time. And I'm sorry Goldie Hawn wasn't here to jazz it up for you. So we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. That's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform. YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble. We're on them all as well. Liberty Nation News has its own Roku channel where you can see all of our TV productions. Now, Liberty Nation does not endorse candidates, campaigns, or legislation, and this presentation is no endorsement. We'd like to take a moment for a shout out to our board's producer, Laura Valkovic, who's on maternity leave, bringing in another member of Liberty Nation News into the fold. I'm your host, Sarah Cowgill. Thanks for joining us today for the latest news and commentary. Your choice for free thinking, free speech, libertynation.com.